Hello, my name is Makosinski, and as he said, you may or may not have heard of me for my invention of the hollow flashlight, which is a flashlight that runs solely on the heat of the human hand. I know I would not be here today talking to you all if it weren't for my creation, so I would like to use my time effectively and tell just how I got here and my story. Well, I am half Filipino and half Polish. In other words, a fully blooded Canadian. I like the outdoors, camping, sports, and elk jerky. But as a young child, my parents often told me, "You're not eating your Brussels sprouts? Think of all the kids in Africa who don't have anything to eat." Well, I think after the first few times, this reminder was effective, but afterwards, it just became something to make fun of with friends and roll one's eyes at. I don't think us younger kids actually understand what it's like to be a child whose basic needs are barely even met. I certainly didn't, until a few years ago when I went to the Philippines. We stayed at a small village where my mother's family still lives. I remember people there were just so happy and content with whatever they had, and I remember pulling out my violin to practice, and all the kids were coming and peering through the windows because they'd never seen a real violin before. Of course, when I started playing, they all ran away. But I made friends quickly enough by playing tag and soccer with them on the streets. I became particularly close with one of the girls, we'll just call her Maria, and we were really close. We kept in contact. It's been about 6 years since I last saw her, and a couple of years ago, we were messaging, and she told me she had just failed her entire grade at school, a whole entire year. I was very shocked. She was a very bright child. I was like, well, what happened? What's wrong? And she said she didn't have any electricity. She didn't have any light to study with at night, so she couldn't see anything. When she came home, she had to do the house chores, take care of her family in the house, and at night was the time she was supposed to study, but because she couldn't see, she failed her grade. Maria's story really struck a chord in me. That was terrible. What if I failed a whole year of school? And what really got me was she didn't fail her grade because she wasn't smart enough or she wasn't trying hard, but simply because she didn't have any electricity. It made me really think of all the things you really take for granted. Every time we flick the switch on or plug in our charger, we never really consider the fact that over 1.2 billion people around the world still do not have any electricity. I also had thought of another story my geography teacher had told me when she used to work in Africa. She used to reward the students with candles so that they could see at night and study. While we are buried in our cell phones and computers and worrying about the new operating system, a huge problem for Maria and other people like her is just having light and electricity. And it's not just in rural areas like the Philippines or Africa, it's in other places. 173 million people in urban areas are still not connected to the grid. They don't have any electricity. So I wanted to do something about this. I wanted Maria and people just like her to have some source of energy and light. I had been participating in the local science fair since I was in grade 6, and in 2011, I created a piezoelectric flashlight. Well, what's a piezoelectric flashlight? Well, piezoelectric crystals are on these discs, and if you vibrate them or put pressure on the surface, they will produce electricity. So I simultaneously vibrated a bunch of these discs with a gear and a crank, and see if I can. Here it is, and let me just, there we go. So it's like this. As you can see, it's pretty noisy, even though it did have a bright light. So I couldn't use this in small villages where Maria lived because there was no traffic there. She would be studying at night, and people, if they had windows, were usually open, and so it would be too noisy. And I wanted something you didn't have to crank. I had heard about and I experimented with solar cells, things like that, but I wanted something that was reliable, always there. You didn't have to worry if it was sunny. I wanted something that would work in a quiet, dark environment like her house. Then I thought, why not harvest the human body heat? After all, we are described as 100-watt walking light bulbs. We have so much energy in the form of heat just radiating out of us, and we're not using any of that. It's just being put to waste. So I made a decision. I was going to harvest some of that energy. In my grade 7 science fair project, I had used something called Peltier tiles. Now, if my hand is the tile, and you heat one side of these tiles and you cool the other, a small electric charge is produced. In my grade 7 project, I had heated one side of these tiles with a candle flame and cooled the other side with these computer heat sinks. So I was actually quite surprised. I did get enough power to power a small radio, I believe. So last summer, I decided I'd take these Peltier tiles to the next level. I was going to heat one side of these tiles with the palm of my hand, just the human heat, and cool the other side with the ambient air and a hollow aluminum tube. This allowed for maximum air convection currents to flow through and around the tube and cool it even further. To provide the light, I'd be using white LEDs, also known as light-emitting diodes. Now, the thing with LEDs is, or diodes in general, they only start conducting once a certain voltage is produced. So for me, that meant that my lights wouldn't start lighting up until a certain amount of power was being entered into them. This was around 2,500 millivolts, and I was only getting around 50 millivolts from my Peltier tiles, so I had a problem. And it started off with me being very frustrated because I'm not an electrical engineer. So I had to think. I asked my parents, but they're not electrical engineers either, so they didn't know. So I turned to the internet, and that is a great resource. We should all use the internet, you guys. So I finally found a solution, and my flashlight only had 4 components, and this was around by November I'd find the solution, and I had 2 working prototypes by last March. So if you could dim the lights a bit, here is my Peltier tiled flashlight, my hollow flashlight. I have the tiles here, these white tiles, and my hand, ooh, it's freezing, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll put in my hand, maybe it'll light up. So, I don't know if you guys can tell, it's pretty warm in here. So obviously the greater the temperature differential, the more power will be produced. So, you know, it's bright enough to find a regular flashlight to use at the moment. But I am working on the efficiency and brightness. So I was very excited. This has no batteries in it, so it's going to be like my perfect science fair project. So I presented it at the local science fair, also known as the Vancouver Island Regional Science Fair, and I didn't win. I came in second overall, but this led to the Canada-wide science fair where I won a gold medal. After all that happened, one of my science teachers, I don't have a science fair teacher, one of my science teachers came up to me and she was like, "Hey, Anne, I heard about this, like Google Science Fair. You should totally apply." And I was like, "Oh, Google Science Fair, sounds pretty cool." And so I got like back in my mind, I'm like, "Oh yeah, Google Science Fair, I'm gonna apply." And then, school came and I was like, Google Science Fair, I haven't applied. And so quickly, I submitted my project, which is an online submission, along with a short video for Google on YouTube about my project, literally 45 minutes before the online deadline. I was pretty stressed that night. And lo and behold, a few months later, actually last month, I headed off to the Google Science Fair as one of the 15 world finalists, and I was lucky enough to win my age category. Now, winning a science fair is awesome, and it feels pretty good, but this, my flashlight, isn't about the prize or the trip or the free laptop. It's about people like Maria. It was about taking a problem that is very real to her and thousands of other kids around the world and trying to make it better. Today, because of the internet, we know about the global problems and the lack of resources to solve them. So I challenge you, the next time you observe a problem, you fix it. Don't wait for someone else to fix it. I'm trying my best. When I see a problem, I'll try and fix it. You try and fix it. We should all work together as a team and fix it. If you are complaining that, oh, my phone is too slow, or, oh, keeps running out of battery too fast, well, you try and understand the problem and find a solution. Because if you find a solution for a personal problem and spread the word, you may be also solving a problem for many others as well. The world is now focusing more and more on the issues of energy and alternative energy sources. This is a big problem, and it cannot be solved by just one person with a single invention, but I think it can be done by many people making small but significant, even tiny contributions. We must work together as a team, because 1.2 billion people without electricity is 1.2 billion people who don't have their chance for their voice to be heard unless we help and enable them to. And what will I be doing with my flashlight? Well, right now I'm working on making it a lot brighter and cheaper and more attractive looking. This is really difficult and it might take some time, but companies have offered to help and distribute a finalized version of my flashlight around the world. Hopefully this can happen so that Maria and others like her will be able to finish their homework, finish their education, and who knows, maybe become the next TEDx speakers. My own experience with my flashlight made me adopt this rather corny motto, but I will share it with you today. It's called, "And don't be the drain, use your brain." As the title of this talk says, be the source. We all have this power within, power to be our own resource. Let me tell you a secret. I am not the best in my class, and I probably will never be, but I can think and I can solve problems when I see them, and if I can do it, everyone else can do it. And can I just say, we are so lucky here in Canada. We have the freedom of choice, our actions, information, the freedom of speech. All of us here, we're comfortable, well-fed, warm, and well-informed. For the most part, our lives are pretty good. But what about those in Maria's world? It's a bit time to think about others. Let's ask ourselves, how can I help? What can I do? Enabling kids in a faraway village to read at night may be considered a tiny deed, but as a team, I am convinced we can solve the bigger issue. And that is to light up the nights for those in the world without electricity. It's one big, crazy-sounding dream, but I know it's possible. Nikola Tesla would have wanted it, and so do I. I hope that in the near future, my flashlight can light the way for those who wish to learn, and in turn, help others to become the next source of solutions, not problems. Oh, and don't wait, start early. Thank you for listening.